What's up, addicts? How you doing? We are continuing our series today, going through all of the divisions in the NFL, giving you guys a Dynasty trade report. And in today's video, we are going over the NFC South. Lots of mix-ups and changes going on in this division, so let's get right into the video. All right, we would begin with none other than the Atlanta Falcons. Now, obviously, couple of big additions to their offense in Todd Gurley and Hayden Hurst. Also added Dante Fowler, a good edge rusher for them. They did lose a few pieces as well. Devonta Freeman and Austin Hooper are out, so basically being replaced by Gurley and Hurst. They lost Ty Sambarillo, Adrian Claiborne on the defensive line, Devondre Campbell, linebacker, Vic Beasley, and Desmond Trufant. So quite a few pieces on defense. Now, Falcons didn't have the strongest defense to begin with, and then in the draft, kind of make a panic pick in taking AJ Terrell with 16th overall. Probably could have either traded down or grabbed a guy like CeeDee Lamb. Would have been a better move for them, but we'll see how it turns out over time. They also get Marlon Davidson, an edge rusher there, and Matt Hennessy, a center out of Temple. So overall, not too much changing on their offensive line, which is already one of the weaker ones in general, but didn't really do anything to add any more offensive weapons in the draft, so we know pretty clearly what the fantasy lineup is looking like going in. Pretty much the only big changes, like we said, were Gurley and Hurst. So Matt Ryan, his value is pretty stable. Like I said, not really too much changing on the offensive line there. Todd Gurley sees his value, I think, goes up a little bit coming here to Atlanta. They didn't draft anyone else. Yes, he is on a one-year deal, but he was already on a pretty heavy downtrend in terms of his value. So I think he's going to have a pretty good season here. Could probably work his way into getting a couple more years in Atlanta after this season. Now, Julio Jones, I would say, is probably overvalued in most dynasty formats, just when you consider he's going on age 31. Now, I don't think he's going to have a complete catastrophe of a season, but receivers of his size very rarely continue playing well beyond age 30. The body type he has, the kind of hits he's taken, he's already racked up a pretty significant number of injuries, especially with that foot. So the question is, how much longer can he continue playing in his prime? He's got Calvin Ridley nipping at his heels for being the number one option there. I still think Julio Jones will be a very valuable receiver this year in the NFL and for fantasy. So if you're in win now, you're probably going to keep Julio Jones. But if you're in any type of rebuild or you have some depth, I would still try to capitalize on Julio Jones's name value and trade him while his value is still high. Because if this is his cliff season, we know it's coming. It happens to all the greats. Andre Johnson had a cliff season. Calvin Johnson, had all those injuries pile up. We see where AJ Green is now. That could very well be Julio Jones, even as soon as this year. So if you can get value on him now, I would get off of him pretty quickly. Calvin Ridley is a guy I feel like is undervalued. So you got the exact opposite problem between Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. I really like Calvin Ridley a lot. I think if you can acquire him now before he has a season where he overtakes Julio Jones as the one, his value most likely will only go up beyond this point. So you can still buy him cheaper now than you will be able to in a year. And then guys like Russell Gage or Laquan Treadwell, there's probably people you just let sit on your waiver for now. If either Ridley or Jones get hurt, they'll see their value go up. But if you're handcuffing receivers, I guess, but most people don't do that. And then Hayden Hurst, I think his value goes up a good bit. Matt Ryan does have a tendency to throw it at tight ends when they're good enough. We saw Austin Hooper had a really good year last year. I don't think Hayden Hurst is that much of a down step from Austin Hooper. I think they did the right thing in letting Hooper walk, get paid in Cleveland, and then bring on Hayden Hurst for a much cheaper deal. Hayden Hurst looked decent in Baltimore. Obviously, Mark Andrews was the main guy there, but I think Hayden Hurst will get a lot of work here and should be a sneaky tight end one this year. All right, let's jump to the Carolina Panthers. One of the biggest shakeups in terms of coaching staff. You get Matt Rule there from Baylor, and then Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator from LSU, that just gave us world record-setting offense there with Joe Burrow. So they flip a lot of things in terms of their coaching staff, and then they also change out Cam Newton for Teddy Bridgewater. They add Robbie Anderson, another field stretcher for that team there with Curtis Samuel already there, and then they add Russell Okung and tackle there. But they had a really long list of defensive players and even some offensive guys are gone. Obviously, I already mentioned Cam Newton is gone, Kyle Allen is gone, Greg Olsen and Try Turner, Greg Van Roten on the offensive line, and Darrell Williams. I mean, not people that are really considered like in the elite echelon, but some depth pieces there. Dontari Poe is gone, Luke Kuechly retired, Mario Addison, Vernon Butler, Bruce Irvin, James Bradbury, good cornerback there, Ross Cockrell, and Eric Reed all gone. So a lot of holes on this defensive side, which goes to show why they spend every single one of their draft picks on a defensive player. They grabbed Derek Brown in the first round, Etor Gross-Matos in the second round, edge rusher there, Jeremy Chin a safety, Troy Pride cornerback, and then my boy Kenny Robinson from the St. Louis Battlehawks. Shout out to the XFL. So going hard after the defense, but with the amount of pieces that they lost, and considering that their defense was already pretty bad last year, it's hard to see that this will be a defense beyond like bottom 10. Very well could be one of the worst defenses in the NFL, which means that their offense is going to have to score a lot of points, and because they didn't draft a lot of any offensive players, we have a lot of clarity over who they perceive as their starters. So we know that Teddy Bridgewater comes into town. Don't get confused, he's not a rushing quarterback. I've seen that argument around a lot. I don't know why. Teddy Bridgewater does not run the ball, especially after that terrible knee injury. I mean, he ran the ball about as much as Drew Brees did last year, which is basically never. Now, he gets a rap of not being a deep ball passer, and I've even used that argument against him. He historically hasn't, but it's not like he hasn't been efficient when he has gone deep down the field. He just doesn't do it very often. So he's probably going to play close to the line of scrimmage a lot, but he has a really good core around him for that. You got Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in the NFL, especially in the passing game, can create a lot of yards in those short passes. Teddy Bridgewater is hyper accurate in 10 to 20 yards down the field. That's where Christian McCaffrey eats. So Christian McCaffrey is going to be just as good with Teddy Bridgewater as he was with. I mean, come on, Kyle freaking Allen was terrible last year. So Teddy Bridgewater is not going to be a downgrade from Kyle Allen. So Christian McCaffrey is fine. Value is still good. DJ Moore, I think his value is even up further. We saw him perform well with Kyle freaking Allen. So if Teddy Bridgewater is even a 20-30% increase of what Kyle Allen gave us, DJ Moore could be in for a Chris Godwin type season. Like I said, they didn't really do much else to this offense other than add Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel are kind of redundant assets. They're both going to stretch the field. DJ Moore is going to man those short intermediate routes, and he is a yak monster, can do great things with the ball in his hand. Greg Olsen is gone. This is wheels up season for DJ Moore. We have him ranked as a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty. If you don't have him, do everything that you can to get DJ Moore onto your team now before the season starts, because once DJ Moore blows up, you will never get a chance to acquire him again, because he's only 23. Blows up this season, he's going to be far too expensive next year. Get him now while his value is still lower than it should be. And then Ian Thomas, another name here I really like as a tight end prospect. Again, I keep mentioning there's like 4 or 5 guys in this tier of the Mike Gesicki, Ian Thomas, Jonnu Smith type guys, Hayden Hurst, Blake Jarwin, guys in that range that any one of them could blow up and become a top 8 tight end like that, just based on the way that their offenses are shifting around them. You had Greg Olsen in front of him, just like Blake Jarwin had Jason Witten. Well, they don't have those guys in front of them anymore. So give me Ian Thomas, and don't spend early picks on tight end. Just grab a guy like Ian Thomas later in your draft. Okay, let's jump down to the New Orleans Saints. Not a lot of movement here. This is a team that's going to be pretty similar, but there are a few pieces we want to talk about. First of all, add Jameis Winston on a very, very, very small contract. This is one of the more interesting moves, but Jameis Winston is betting on himself being able to play behind Drew Brees. It's looking like Drew Brees is pretty much on the outs after this year. going to go to his broadcasting career post NFL. And Jameis Winston is banking on the fact that he can impress the coaching staff there in New Orleans enough to be the heir apparent to the throne. Now, they did pay Taysom Hill a lot, but I really don't think that they see Taysom Hill as a franchise quarterback just based on the way that they use him more as like a tight end receiver and running back type. That's not something you'd want to do with a franchise quarterback typically. And we really haven't seen Taysom Hill throw the ball that much. So I don't foresee that Taysom Hill will end up being the franchise guy. It's either Jameis Winston or they're going to go after a rookie or someone else in free agency next year. But I do think that Jameis Winston sees this is probably the best thing that he could have done after getting replaced by Tom Brady. They also grabbed Emmanuel Sanders there and Malcolm Jenkins in free agency. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater is gone. They also let Ted Ginn go. Larry Warford is gone. AJ Klein, Eli Apple, in the defensive backfield, and then Von Bell, their safety. So some pieces on defense they lost. They only had 3 picks, I believe, in the NFL draft, or 3 or 4. But of the notable guys, we have Cesar Ruiz, center there, to help their offensive line a little bit. Zach Vaughn, linebacker, to replace AJ Klein. And then they drafted Adam Troutman, which was a little bit of an interesting pick because they traded up for him, but looking to be the heir apparent, I guess, to where Jared Cook is now. So someone for a deep stash in Dynasty. He's our tight end 1 in terms of rookies, but still not a high value pick. So that gets us to the trade report. Drew Brees, this is his last ride. I don't see him playing another season after this one, but if you have him, you're probably not going to get any value for him. So unless you're in total rebuild, just ride him one last time. Jameis Winston, took a complete nosedive in value, but then it went right back up going on the Saints. If you have him, you got to hang on, because if he becomes the Saints franchise quarterback next year, he's going to have tremendous value getting to play with guys like Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas, our wide receiver, number 1 overall. Pretty much consensus across Dynasty rankings, Michael Thomas, the number 1 there. But obviously, after the way he was used last year, it's hard to see him not having another phenomenal season here. They did add Emmanuel Sanders, but I think he's going to be more of a replacement for Ted Ginn. It's not really like he's going to be competing with Michael Thomas too much. And Michael Thomas pretty much, Emmanuel Sanders last year pretty much took a nosedive as the season went on. So getting up there in age, I don't really know that Emmanuel Sanders has the ability to play a full season at full strength. So Michael Thomas, incredible value there. Emmanuel Sanders, another one of those guys in like the Adam Thielen, T.Y. Hilton tier of if you're in a win now mode and you really just want to stock up some flex receivers for your roster to give you a little extra boost, you can probably acquire Emmanuel Sanders for pretty cheap. And then we have, it's not the same situation, but similar to like Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, we got Jared Cook, who's most likely going to be the far more valuable tight end this season, but going forward, rather have Adam Troutman there. So if you have Jared Cook and a win now team, it's good to keep him. If not, try to flip him for another asset, and you could sit on Adam Troutman as he develops for this team. All right, and let's get to the last team, one of the more interesting movers across the NFL, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So obviously, biggest ad of every team in the offseason. They grab Tom Brady, and then they convince Rob Gronkowski to come out of retirement. So they get Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski to their offense. They obviously let Jameis Winston go. Rashad Perriman moved to the Jets, and then they lost Carvin Asib on the defensive line. That's pretty much it in terms of notable players added and dropped. So not too much changing across this team. They move up to draft Tristan Wirfs in the draft, so get a really good tackle there to help protect Tom Brady. They get Antoine Whitfield, a safety, and then they grab Keyshawn Vaughn and Tyler Johnson with their next 2 picks. So investing mostly in offense here, safety to help with the passing game. They already had a really good run defense last year. Pass defense was a little shaky, so maybe Winfield will be able to help that a little bit. But overall, this is going to be a team that's going to try to beat you, obviously, with more efficient quarterback play, hopefully a lot less interceptions from Tom Brady. And like I said, their defense was already pretty good last year, so it didn't need too many upgrades, and they didn't lose any key pieces. So obviously with Tom Brady, a lot of people are asking, what do we expect from him? I wouldn't really expect a worse season than last year. And last year he was a okay fantasy asset for Dynasty Superflex. Very well could be a quarterback 1 again, being able to throw to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Now you got OJ Howard and Gronkowski there. You get a pass catching back in Keyshawn Vaughn. It's going to be a very interesting season to see how quickly he can develop with a new coach and a new team, especially with everything going on right now with this pandemic. That's going to be one of the bigger storylines, is all these quarterbacks that change teams, all these new coaches. How effectively are they going to be able to institute their new system, considering everything that's happening right now? Will they actually be able to get the ample amount of training time to implement their system? So that is something we have to keep in mind. But assuming that these teams are actually able to work up and ramp up to be prepared for the season, Tom Brady could have a really good season. I really like Keyshawn Vaughn. I know he's a little bit older than Ronald Jones, which is strange considering he's the rookie and Ronald Jones is entering his year 3 season. But Ronald Jones has shown us that he's not the greatest pass protector, and he's really not good in the passing game. Two things that Tom Brady really likes in a running back are people who can pass protect and people who can catch the ball. Now, Dare Ogunbowale might end up being the James White in that offense, which would hurt Keyshawn Vaughn's value, but I think Keyshawn Vaughn has much more stable value heading into this season than Ronald Jones does. Definitely worth a late first or early second round pick in rookie drafts, just for the upside of what this offense could be for the next couple years. Chris Godwin, pretty much stable. I think that he'll end up being Tom Brady's favorite target after his breakout season last year and playing a lot in the slot, which is a favorite position for Brady to throw to. I don't really see his value going down. Volume in total might go down a little bit, but Brady still threw the ball a lot last year as well. People seem to forget that. Mike Evans, I think, is the one that sees his value go down just a smidge. Brady doesn't throw the ball up and hope that his receiver will go up and get it. He's much more calculated than Jameis Winston was. So Mike Evans kind of made his hay on compiling a lot of targets, even when the ball was being thrown in a situation that probably wasn't the best idea to throw the ball, especially in the red zone. So I could see his touchdown count coming down a little bit, but getting to play with a more accurate and more calculated quarterback with Tom Brady could still have a pretty good season. So that's why I'm not bringing his value down all that much, but I do think that volume is pretty key in terms of Mike Evans' value, and I do think the volume will go down. All other wide receivers, with the addition of Tyler Johnson there, it's going to make that situation a little bit murky. Scotty Miller might emerge as the third wide receiver there. We still have Justin Watson, now Tyler Johnson there. It's hard to really value any of these guys. They're probably all people that you want to keep on your waiver wire, except for maybe Tyler Johnson. Just keep him stashed on your bench. And then welcome back Gronk. Probably end up being a top 10 tight end this season, although he's probably not going to move the needle too much. If you have him in Dynasty, I'd probably try to flip him if someone in your league values him really high. And then O.J. Howard, probably still looking to find another team next year, but I still believe in his talent, and overall I would be trying to acquire him on the cheap, especially now with Gronk back. You can probably get him pretty cheap. All right, that's pretty much it for the NFC South. Thank you guys for joining us in this one. One more video like this for our Dynasty trade reports. We'll go over the NFC West in our next video. Hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this one, and we'll see you guys in the next video.